going to start, and if people join, and they can kind of catch up. So just before I start, I need to just say, like, we are recording this session for YouTube. So if anyone's not comfortable with that, could you kind of mute your, obviously like everyone mutes their audio while just for the beginning bit anyway, but there will be like a proper Q&A after. But just mute your audio and mute your video if you don't want to be on camera. Or if you're just not comfortable at all, like this doesn't have to go on YouTube, just let me know and I can, and we can make sure that doesn't happen. And obviously in the Q, if you don't want to be on camera in the Q&As, just like put your messages in the chat and I can answer them there. So a bit of like, I guess I should start just by giving like a bit of background on me, because like most of you like don't know who I am. Like just a strange selfie on the London LGBTQ Centre Instagram page. So I have been working in social media since I left uni, which was like 3 years ago now. For the most part of that, I've worked with musicians. So that is like 2.5 years of my life. And then the other part, I worked for a clothing company. At the moment, I work for a company called CYOA, who have been going for like 10 years. They're definitely like one of the kind of really good music social agencies. We've got like 20 something clients between the 4 channel managers. We all have our like specialities. So it's quite like funny when you look at the roster and who does what, because I just end up doing all the pop girls. Because that is kind of my thing, and there's like someone else does all the rock. But then we all have our own, we have like one which is so kind of opposite to us, which is a good kind of like, just to make sure we don't get too specialized. So with the kind of session today, I thought it'd be really good if I just like ran through quickly all of the different social channels, kind of what's the best practices for each at the moment, because obviously that changes. I would say it changes every year, but it probably changes like every 6 months, really. Talk a bit about like algorithms, etc., and then a bit like probably for half of it, and then the other half just like ask me questions, and I like can help that way. So I wanted to just start with some kind of like really general points. So the one thing that I would say is really important is just to make sure like, one thing else I forgot to say is I'm going to send around a document with all my notes on. So if you don't have to make any notes during this, well, that might be quite useful. But anyway, I think one thing that I would say, definitely, if you're like a brand, if you're an artist, if you're whatever, just make sure every platform you're on, that is like brand consistency across platforms. I'm talking like, make sure if you can get the same handle, across. To be honest, I would say even unless you can literally get like your name, the business name on one channel and you can't get that anywhere else, every other instance when you're setting up, you should try and get the same one. That's like, I'm trying to think like of an example. We've got artists, for example, that have got their names are so similar to kind of are so common. So obviously someone has got their handles and we've managed to get it on one channel, but everywhere else we've had to kind of think of something else. It's just important to make sure that everything's consistent. That also comes down to like profile pictures. Make sure your bios are consistent, just so that when someone sees you on Instagram and then they move over to your Twitter, they move over to your Facebook page, they know it's you. I would say next, really, the one piece of advice actually, and I've like not put this at the top, even though this is like the one thing that I would always say to anyone. I say to like when I've kind of done things like this before, and they're like, what's your one top tip? I would just say, never, ever, ever post anything that you wouldn't like to talk about in real life. It's quite a big part for me, and that I come up with kind of these ideas and I'm like putting kind of movie references and kind of I've maybe put together the playlists for people for their like Spotify's and like they need to, I can't include artists or films that they wouldn't know about, because like what if they got asked about it and were like just put on the spot? I guess even it goes as far as like, if you're going for a job interview, like, would you be happy talking about what's on your socials? And that's not to say like don't post stuff that's like political or etc., because I think it's really important, but it's just make sure that you can like talk about it convincingly. In terms of amount, I always get asked what's the like golden amount you should be posting a week, and that is a proper how long's a piece of string question. I think like it depends obviously platform to platform. A lot of the time we say there should be something going out every day, but that's not to say you need to be posting something to feed every day. We generally say, like, especially with musicians and artists, it's good to always have your stories going. Like, it's good to kind of just be posting your day-to-day stuff that isn't like as kind of glam as you would want on feed, but it's just good for kind of letting your fans and your kind of audience know who you are as a brand, as a person, without that kind of gloss. And also, like, I've been to, like, Instagram has said so many times that like stories are going to be more important than feed. Like, it's proper on the graph, it's like more people are going to be looking at stories from now on. So it's really important to kind of just keep on, and then it will really help with the algorithm, because if more people are watching your story because you're just posting more regularly, you'll move up and up their kind of circles at the top. Kind of obviously basic stuff, like it's good to kind of best practice, like when you're writing captions, just to put a question in there, put something in so that people can respond to it, so that kind of when they're commenting, you'll get pushed up their algorithm even more. Don't overdo it though. It's not something you should be doing kind of like every single post, because at the end of the day, like, people want to have answered 2 questions, they're not going to answer the third necessarily. So we kind of say like once a week is quite good for a call to action. Make sure you reply to messages and comments. It's really important to make sure that everyone feels valued. Something I'm getting asked loads at the moment, at least kind of, if not daily, like every other day, when is the best time to do a live stream? Obviously, speaking from music perspective, like, no one can do gigs anymore, no one can do interviews, no one can go out and do like physical promos, so everyone wants to do live streams all the time. There is unfortunately just not the best time for live streams now anyway, when we're like 6 or 7 weeks into quarantine. At the start, when no one was doing them, kind of your like standard rules would apply, like an evening session would be best. But obviously now, like, I can go on Instagram on a, say, Friday night at like 6:30, and there's up to like 10 people live, which is kind of your peak times are really competitive now. So my advice for that is just to like pick the time that feels most relevant to what you're doing. Like, I've got a band who are doing like live DJ sets, and they're kind of like, when should we be posting it? And I'm like, well, like, I would say like the best time to probably do a live stream is like a Monday evening, because like no one else is doing them, but also that it's going to feel so weird on Monday evening. So like a Friday evening probably is still best. Whereas if you're doing like a fitness live stream, don't be doing that at 9 o'clock on a Friday, because no one's going to watch it. Like, even though your kind of 8 a.m. is competitive for that, like, just make sure what you're doing is really good, and then people will come to it. I'm not going to talk about passwords, because that's what you can read, and it's not that exciting to talk about, but just make sure you change them. I would say, like, as a general rule, like, if you're looking, it's really important just to always be looking in your like stats on Instagram. Flip over to a business account, it looks no different, apart from you can like link to your not link to your website, like put your address or put your email address in so people can contact you. There is no other difference, and you get just such a wealth of like information on best performers and stuff. And kind of when your audience are online, so that's really important. But don't also be so disheartened if you see like a video performing worse than an image, because that is just standard. Like, videos don't engage in the same way as stills, because like generally people only engage in one way, so they'll watch the video but they won't necessarily double tap to like it, or they won't comment. So like if you see a piece of video content that gets like 1,000 views more than you would expect, but hasn't kind of engaged in the same way as like an amazing selfie, like that is still a really good performing post. And then one last thing generally is just like make sure you're following all the key players in your relevant industries. Follow the people. If you're like a new musician, for example, make sure you're following the plugger at Radio 1. Sorry, not the plugger, the like head of pop at Radio 1. The like kind of other artists that you can like start talking to. Maybe then that might lead to like a support slot. Make sure you're like following people that book for TV shows, etc., and build that relationship up, because when you are at the point where it's like ready to kind of cross over to being a mainstream artist, or you're going to start getting more eyes on you, it's good for these people to already know you. So that's just some general tips. Moving on, I'm going to go through everything, all the individual channels now. So on Instagram, my number one tip for Instagram is just wherever possible, please, please, please don't post landscape. This sounds so like, when I tell people this, like I was like talking to my boyfriend about it, and he was like, oh my God, that's such like I never thought of that. But like if you're posting landscape, when you're scrolling through feed, there's going to be another post below you. So like if someone's looking on their feed, they see a landscape, and then they might see something below that's kind of someone that they will also like really want to look at and just skip past you. Whereas if you post like a portrait image, that entire feed when they open their Instagram is you. So they're going to just be more drawn to your post. Obviously that doesn't work every time. Like for us, there are times when like a photographer's taken a beautiful kind of landscape image from a gig, and it's kind of not really fair to crop it to a vertical. Kind of is still good practice for us to kind of like honor the artists and the photographer's work. But wherever you're like creating assets, try and do it a square or a portrait, just so you have that kind of domination of the feed. And when you're posting these images, just make sure they're like as high quality as possible. Don't post anything that's kind of even slightly blurry. Like the best way to kind of, if you're with your business or with the person whose socials you're running, just try and stick to either iMessage or a Dropbox for kind of transporting assets, just because WhatsApp will compress. And where Instagram then also compresses, like assets can become quite blurred, especially if you're zooming in on stuff. Moving on, like it's good to have a good mix of images and video on feed. Kind of, I'm sure I've been told at some point the magic ratio is like 60% images, 40% videos. Kind of definitely sway slightly more to photos, but it's good to have a good mix. Unless obviously it's a photography account, then it's much better just to have 100% photo. Or if you're a videographer, it's good to have like more video content, because that's what you're kind of selling. I already talked about it's really important to use stories. Good to be posting almost daily, and we definitely see kind of across every client I've ever worked on, like long stories work better than short stories. We've definitely like, I used to work at ASOS, and when I was there, like the magic number was like 8 slides. Like you could get to an 8-slide story, it would like bang. So like that's just a kind of a little piece of like, but obviously that's not always possible. It's good just to not always be posting 1 slide. So regularly update your highlights, because people do watch them. One thing to note, just I haven't got the stat to hand because it was a conference I went to quite a long time ago, but like so few people look at your feed. It's good for discovery, so it's good for it to look like banging. Like you don't want it to look rubbish, but people don't go onto your personal feed. They're looking through they will mainly like your photos through their homepage. So don't worry if like, I would say kind of now anyway, like avoid kind of any like really kind of amazing tiling, because it just looks like, I personally really hate when people do like when they announce like a single cover or a movie poster and they split it across tiles. And when you're like scrolling through the feed, you can just see like 9 puzzle pieces. like that just isn't kind of how people use Instagram anymore. So just like make sure, I would say, make sure you just post really nice assets, even if there's not like a necessarily a kind of running theme, because people are just not looking at your feed necessarily, but they will be looking for discovery. So don't go posting anything like, if it looks kind of, obviously like as musicians, they have like stuff that has to be posted, like a Radio 1 first play asset or something that can be like not the most beautiful, not kind of the most in keeping with your like aesthetic, but you can always just archive them kind of a few weeks after. If you're doing kind of Instagram lives at the end of the stream, there is now kind of within the last week just an option to post that straight to IGTV. So that's really important. Like just make sure if you're doing a live, post it to there. I've seen like Barry's Bootcamp, they save all of their workouts now for an extra day on IGTV. So I think that's just a really good way to like kind of help discovery. But don't overdo it on IGTV. We kind of say like just once a week or once every 2 weeks is really good, and kind of just like trying to establish like a franchise that you do on Instagram, on IGTV. So like, for example, like some people do like covers videos every Monday. Some people do like, if you're, I don't know, like a flower shop, like doing kind of all the new flowers you get in every Monday, and then people will return and be like, oh, I can see now that they've got like lilies in this week, I'll drop them an order or something, or like a bookshop, that would work really well. Kind of just always go through your tag stories, just make sure like share anything that's really good, but always add something to the story. So if you're like, don't just share it with like kind of no extra comment, no like Giphy sticker, because that will get deprioritized a little bit in the algorithm. Like Instagram love it when you can like take it a step further. So, and there's a few other bits I've written down, but I'll share this round because I've talked through the most exciting stuff. Facebook. So I literally I think every single artist I've ever worked with hates Facebook. It's like, it's just a platform musicians don't use it. So that's what I come in and like I have to make their Facebooks like amazing. Like just over the last few years, like pages have been really hit by Facebook algorithm changes. Like there was a point where pages were getting massively prioritized because that's what Facebook wanted to focus on, and then it flipped about 2 years ago, and they've started like, they really prioritize people's friends and groups now. So it is really hard just to kind of make kind of an imprint on Facebook without kind of spending loads and loads of money. But there's a few things you can do to kind of really help your reach, and just make sure like Facebook's always a really good one to have ticking over, especially as a business, because you can like link to products. It's a good ad platform. So I would say like don't add kind of any Instagram, Twitter, YouTube tabs to the side of your Facebook page. I know it saves you time because you don't have to then be posting stuff organically to your feed, but people just don't look at them. And they're always, I do think they're quite ugly. They never quite work properly. So I would say always like, if you're posting something on Instagram, you don't really have time to spend strategizing your Facebook page, just be copying and pasting your Instagram posts over to Facebook. Link your Instagram stories to your Facebook story as well, just so you can, whenever you're posting something to Instagram story, it automatically posts Facebook stories for you. That's a really like kind of easy win. Put all the links to your other social channels throughout your Facebook page, like in your story, in your about section, just so that if people do discover you on Facebook, which they can still do through like recommendations and reviews, when they then would go and look at your Instagram, for example, make sure that they can do that really easily. Like we still see now, when I've been working with like artists that maybe had their Facebook page set up like 10 years ago, they haven't got these things in there, and it's like, oh, this is such an easy win, and would help kind of migrate the like Facebook audience that you could once grow. Like it was so easy to grow a Facebook audience like 10 years ago, and now you want to migrate them to like Instagram, especially as a musician. in terms of what does best on Facebook, so your top thing that they love is long form video. So they massively prioritize video content that's like over 3 minutes long. Obviously, that's really like requires some kind of like video editing element or kind of some sort of like creation to make that, but that is what they really like. And then at the bottom of the things they will just deprioritize, GIFs don't work, and also videos that are just one still image with sound, or a kind of an animated still image, like they just hate them. Like there are times for us when it has to be that asset, but I always just try and be like, no, we'll do something else, let's shoot something really quickly. Just make sure your like Facebook page is optimized as like well as you can. So just make sure like your shop now button works. Like I said, all your links work, because people will go elsewhere from your Facebook. Be consistent as to whether or not you reply to people. So like don't reply to like one customer, one fan, and then never touch your like Facebook messages again. Like either do it or don't do it. It's not necessarily something you need to do, because it's much better to just to do your like Instagram messages or your Twitter messages. And then just for discoverability, when you're uploading video content, make sure you do a good SEO title on it, just so that it's really discoverable in Facebook Watch. There was a time like even like 6 or 7 months ago when it was kind of like best practice just to copy your caption into your video title, but now you've got to do like a proper for us we would do like the artist name dash the title, even if it's like I don't know, like a TikTok or something that we're just sharing that kind of it just has a song on it, but it's not necessarily like a music video asset, etc. Moving on to Twitter. So your average Twitter user is someone who goes to the platform to look for news. Also, your average Twitter user, I think, is male, whereas Instagram is a lot more female skewed. I think like from definitely like everyone I kind of work with, spoken to, like Twitter is a hard platform to get right. It does just take a lot of work. It takes, where on like, for example, Instagram, you could post your one image a day, a few stories within kind of an hour, and that's kind of it for the day. Like Twitter does kind of rely on like a few posts a day. But it's for sure the easiest one to talk to your like followers. It's what it's made for. So I would always just say to like, when I'm talking to like musicians, I'm always just like, just make sure you're chatting to people, like talk to your fans, build up that relationship. And then when people who have heard your song on Spotify, New Music Friday, land on your Twitter and they can see you're talking to people, they'll be more inclined to follow, because they can kind of get that relationship with you, and then that'll build, help build your fan base. Just the kind of basic stuff, like make sure you use like the functions on Twitter, like use the polls function. And if you're going to use the polls function, make sure, if you're measuring engagement, make sure you use the amount of people that have voted in the poll and not kind of likes or comments, because it always has, polls always have really low comments and likes, but they will have really high voting normally. Twitter's the only platform really made for GIFs, so make sure you use GIFs. And kind of just going back to what I was saying, really, compared to, for example, TikTok, which I'll come on to in a second, and Instagram, Twitter is one of the only platforms kind of really built and still designed for chronological use. So that's why it's so important to kind of always be kind of posting a little thing, posting a little like opinion on the like TV show, even stuff that's not necessarily related to your kind of what you're selling, but is kind of related to the brand as a whole. So that's Twitter. TikTok is a very, very sophisticated platform. It doesn't look it when you like scroll through it, because it is such a kind of like headache-inducing platform when you first open it. But it's very sophisticated. The users are very intelligent. It's so kind of like scary. Like we did one of the clients I work with, we did TikTok very kindly used her song as the song for International Women's Day this year. We were not like using TikTok with her at the time because it didn't feel like necessarily the most natural place. But we obviously like had to get into it, and obviously TikTok were very kindly like verified. And then literally every comment was like, "How are you verified? How are you verified? Who are you?" People can be really horrible on TikTok. So I would say, if I was the number one bit of advice I give to people when they want to crack TikTok, is you've just got to use the platform like a 14-year-old would be using it. Like, you've got to use it to like be doing the challenges. Like, you've got to do like the Savage Challenge, the like Blinding Lights Challenge, and populate your feed for the first part anyway by doing things that everyone else is doing. And then once you've done that and you've kind of built up your following and people see that it's organic, then you can go and create your challenges, then you can do your promotions. But also, even just to completely contradict what I said, it's good to be original and funny. So how the algorithm works on TikTok is really sophisticated, but they'll seed, you post your video and then it'll get seeded out to, I think, like 100 people. And depending on how long they watch the video, or how many people like it, how many people comment on it, then that determines how many people will then see it. So it's not kind of reliant on a hashtag in the same way that Twitter is, for example. So you need to stand out, especially in times like this when everyone's doing TikToks. Like I just said a minute ago, like, people on TikTok can be quite negative. And like, I've seen it with like my friends who have posted videos who are a bit more kind of alternative looking. Like, people can be really horrible. So I would just say, like, be wary that that's how people are, and just don't take everything with a pinch of salt. Like, don't reply to the nice comments and leave the horrible comments, unless kind of part of your brand is being horrible, like clapping back to people, then obviously that's fine. And then my number one piece of advice to TikTok is make sure anything you post is shot in vertical. Never, ever, ever post anything with black bars at the top or the bottom on TikTok, because the algorithm is so clever, it knows when you've done that, and it will just never, you won't get prioritized at all. Those videos just get so deprioritized. Doesn't mean you can't, for example, if you were posting something on Instagram story, you can save the video and then post it to TikTok. That is fine because it's vertical. You don't have to shoot it in the app, although there are so many amazing functions. In TikTok, it's really good too. But just don't like rip a YouTube video that's shot in landscape and put it straight onto TikTok and kind of expect it to do really well, because it just won't. Which leads me on quite swiftly to YouTube. So I don't know how relevant YouTube is for everyone, but just quickly, like, they've had a real drive in the last kind of 6 months of getting channels optimized as well as they could. So there are lots of kind of small fixes you can do to really make your like channels like bang. So like, if ever you're posting new content, use the Premiere function, set a time, post it out on Instagram, post it out on Twitter, post it out on Facebook, be like, I'm going to be in the chat at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Join me. You can swipe up to the link. People can leave that tab open like overnight. You can do it like, I think you can do it however long in advance you want, although we would say like don't do it like weeks in advance because people will just forget. Join them in the chat, have a conversation, do a Q&A, who get more eyes on that video straight away. They'll probably then share it with their friends, and it's kind of a chain reaction. In terms of like thumbnails, YouTube really likes now when people create their own thumbnails and don't just use like one of the three at the bottom, use one that's kind of designed. So like, remove any black bars from the thumbnail, brighten them up, have a face in it, and then kind of, if you've got branding, put a little brand in, like, I don't know, like Kylie spinning around or something. And it's also really good, coming back to the Kylie example, if you're with her, we had like obviously so many like hundreds of videos on her channel, and you can really drive new views on old content just by refreshing the thumbnail. Because people are like, oh my god, this must be a new piece of content because I've seen this like iconic still for years, and now I've got a new one. A good little trick. Use end cards at the end of your videos just to make sure people stay on your channel. Like, you don't want people to leave, so give them like the 15 seconds at the end of the video where you've got like, you are the latest video, like subscribe to me here, because then you can keep people on your channel before they get to the recommendations bit at the end. And maybe, I don't know, if they're watching like a video on like the Girls Aloud channel, and then they see like a Girls Aloud fan page and be like, oh my god, I need to like, I'm gonna go and watch this funny video. You need to stop them before they do that. I don't know why I say Girls Aloud, by the way. That's not a project I'm working on / no inside info that they're getting back together or anything. I think it's just I was watching a Girls Aloud documentary last night. Regularly update your video descriptions, just to make sure you've got your latest product in there. Pin a comment underneath, ask a question, then reply to some comments. There's a communities tab on your YouTube channel, so just put your like best performing posts from Instagram on there. Don't necessarily need to do a big kind of strategy on YouTube community, but you can put GIFs on there and they normally work quite well. Annoyingly, on YouTube community, it'll crop your images to a square for the preview. Obviously, once you can like click into it and then it'll be like full size, but just be wary that like square is quite good. Create relevant YouTube playlists, etc., etc. I've done a section on Spotify. I don't know how useful that's going to be for everyone. Like, would anyone like me to do the Spotify section? But that's a very like music centric thing. I'll skip over it. So other channels, just a last little section. Giphy's a really good channel to be on, especially if you want to kind of create some stickers for your Instagram stories. So just like create your account and then you can kind of upload and you can like upload your stickers and then use them in Instagram. Try and claim your Google Knowledge panel if you can. So when you Google like your name, your brand name, the artist name, there's a panel on the right hand side of Google, and there's an option in that you can start posting stuff to it. Again, not something you necessarily need to do like a massive strategy for, but it's good if you've got an announcement to post in there. Snapchat is not a dream platform for me because like it's a platform that relies on other. For me as a social media manager, I need the client to do their Snapchat. Like I can't fake it because I'm not them. But it can be quite good, but a lot of people just use it for like kind of person-to-person chat rather than following artists or brands. Not a platform I particularly use, but Pinterest is really good for inspiration. So if you're a brand like I don't know why I keep saying flower shop, but if you're like a florist or a bookshop or a furniture shop or a clothes shop, it's really good to kind of just have a product feed, post any kind of inspo images onto your Pinterest, because the really kind of amazing thing about Pinterest is the shelf life of posts is like 100 times longer. Like I think kind of the people can still be seeing your images like weeks and weeks after you posted it, whereas on Instagram you've really got like 10 hours of kind of solid liking. That obviously for accounts with more followers there will be people going back and liking stuff for a few days after, but I think generally with Instagram you've got kind of a 10-hour shelf life, whereas with Pinterest I think it's like 3 weeks. People will still be service stuff. I don't know if anyone's kind of got any kind of a big audience in other kind of international markets, but just kind of if you do look at kind of local social channels, like for example in Russia they've got VK, so it's really good to kind of have a presence on there if you've got audiences there, or if you're like an artist who's going to tour those countries, it's good to kind of be there. But my number one kind of piece of advice with all the other channels is if you see a new network, just get your handle on there before anyone else can get it. even if you don't use it for like 3 years, it's good to have it, just in case it gets massive. Like, I'm not suggesting like don't spend hours and hours and even seconds on your Vero strategy, but it's good to have your like handle on Vero just in case. Again, so you just want to, it's easier to get your handle day one than it is to kind of get it like 10 years into the social channel being a thing. So that's the end of my spiel. So like, I'd love to, like, if anyone's got any questions on anything I've just said or anything that I've missed, I'd love to answer anything.
Hi, yeah, I've got a question. So, going back to Instagram, how important are hashtags now, and is there a sort of best practice for that?
I would say hashtags are still important for discovery, especially if you're if the account doesn't have thousands and thousands of followers who are super engaged and kind of will push it over so that people can discover you on the discovery feed. Like, if people still search hashtags, it's good to have a few hashtags. I would say best practice, try and vary it up. Don't do I know a few years ago I've had clients and we had like 20 hashtags that we would post as a comment under every post, but that now just is not, it's quite boring. And kind of like, if you post the first 20 hashtags, it will probably work quite well. The second time it will work okay. The third time it will be like, okay, like Instagram probably knows what you're up to now. So I would say like, you can definitely still use hashtags. They're super important on Instagram, still, for kind of discovery, especially if you're like a small account. Vary them, and also when you're picking your hashtags, do a variety of kind of big ones and small ones. So like, I don't know, like, don't just be like hashtag inspo, hashtag Paris, hashtag like kind of generic ones, because there are going to be thousands and thousands of posts, and there are also going to be, by the time you post, there'll already be like 5 new posts. So you kind of want to, it's good to be on those niche hashtags, although they maybe won't bring in as many likes. The kind of the amount of time that people will see that content will be bigger. Another tip kind of on the same line is, wherever possible, try and tag the location at the top, because we definitely see when we post a gig photo, always post the location, because there will be people, weirdly, that like will pay like whatever money's come to your gig but won't follow you on Instagram, and then they will be just looking through like gig pictures from the night before and see you and then follow you. So that is kind of as important as hashtags. I think just for like neatness, like post your hashtag as a separate comment rather than in the caption. And then you can always go back and delete it after like a day, once kind of it's run its course, and then you still have like a really nice like feed.
Cool, thank you.
No worries.
Say for stories, so it's different, but because I'm not like, I don't have like a client, it's also not for me. I wish it was a pop star, but I'm not. But like with my work, it's like we're newsy and we've got the following on Facebook, but like I'm basically now trying to, like, we've got an audience on Instagram just because of the brand name, but it's just a bit of like a dumping ground. So with everything you're saying of like use your stories as much as possible, I know obviously you might not know fully because it's like a separate area, but when I can't just like record myself talking or like get like the face to like talk on stories, do you have anything that you would like recommend, like different like interesting ways to use stories without it just being like swipe up to read this, or do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I would say like an idea I've literally just come up with as you've been talking. One thing that like stands out to me that I don't think it's been done yet, so it might be a good little opportunity, is to kind of, no, I don't think anyone uses stories on like news organizations as kind of like a breaking news source, or maybe at like 6 o'clock every day you could be like, and obviously don't go at 6 because that's when TV news is on, but like maybe like your like 1 o'clock like lunch time news, here's kind of your top stories, post them as kind of like little snapshots with maybe like the headline and then a little like sentence underneath, and then use the functions on Instagram stories almost to like get your audience involved. So like where like at the moment anyway we can't go out and do vox pops, you could maybe like be like, what does everyone think of this, or like what's your opinion on, say like for example, if on the news lockdown tomorrow was Boris Johnson was like, absolutely everyone go back to work, it's safe. Obviously not going to happen. If it did, that'd be the most horrendous thing. But then you could like post a little like sticker and be like, what does everyone think of this? And then kind of like you could almost have like a little debate on stories. So that's one thing I would say. Like you could maybe do something like ask the news editor, or like ask the like ask an expert, maybe like all your questions about coronavirus, or like ask like that kind of thing. Maybe you could do something along the lines of like, okay, it's been a really bad week. Or sorry to go back to my idea for like doing your kind of 1 o'clock like news roundup. Maybe you could do like at 1 o'clock, here are all the best things that have happened today. Here's 5 pieces of really good news. And then that really lends itself to kind of using the kind of functionalities. Like you can use a little like poll sticker where you like drag it along and be like, have the heart eyes emoji, and it could be like, I don't know, here's like a cute cat or something, I don't know. And also when you use kind of the functionality, sorry, I'm just going to get my charger. When you use the functionalities, it performs better because people are engaging with it. Instagram sees that people are engaging with the stories, they'll just service them out to more people. So that's, I don't think I said that when I was going through it, but you try and use like, if you're doing a story, make it interactive, because that will really help.
Fab, thanks so much.
No worries.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Amazing. Well, like I said, like I've got this document if anyone wants it. Just like drop me a message, drop the LGBTQ Centre a message. I'll put together a WeTransfer link kind of this evening or tomorrow morning, can send it out to you. There's a few extra notes in it and stuff, the more boring stuff I didn't really want to go into. Obviously, if you've got any other questions that maybe you didn't think of and you think tonight, oh, I wish I'd asked that, like just like drop me a message and I can kind of, I'm happy to help wherever I can. And yeah, I hope it was useful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Amazing. Right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm just staying here.